Hello, 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 everybody. This is Barbara Moore, and you will find me all over the internet at Catch Your Breath 60. I have a blog, I go Facebook, I have Instagram, and here on YouTube. I have COPD. It stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Chronic means that it's not going away, and I get to keep this forever. Obstructive means that there is an obstruction in the lungs. It does not let air freely flow in and out. It is pulmonary, so it is of the lungs. It is all about the lungs, but not only about the lungs, it's also about your heart, because the two are very closely related. And disease is an adversity that affects people. So it's not a good thing, and nobody really wants to belong to this club, but here we are, right? And there's millions of us. In fact, in 2019, the statistics in Canada were there was 1 million people, or estimated to be 1 million people, that had COPD that didn't know it. So that's big, eh? Those numbers have jumped, of course. We, have just gone through this pandemic, and it is the healthcare system is overrun. Governments are not supporting hospitals in their efforts to get people in and out. They are not supporting the wages and the amount of work that people are doing. So our healthcare system is failing. Our finance system is failing. It's not a good time to be having COPD or any other chronic illness. And this page isn't only just for COPD, but this is what I have. So it means that your lung function is diminishing, causing emphysema, and the effects cannot be reversed. If you're on a page and somebody says to you, I have a cure, or I was cured of COPD, they're frauds and they're scams, because if there was a cure for COPD, your doctors would have jumped on it. There is no cure for COPD. It's not true that your lungs go pink when you stop smoking. All the time that I was a smoker, the thing that I held on to was stupid things like that I read someplace, or some advertisement that said, quit smoking, your lungs will go pink. It's not true. Once there's damage to your lungs, there's really nothing that you can do about it. It is going to, your lung capacity is going to diminish, and you will have that damage for the rest of your life. So the damage to your lungs does not reverse or repair itself, and once it begins, the damage continues to diminish your lung capacity. And when we're really, really young, we think, how many times have I seen people with oxygen on and thought, oh, that'll never happen to me? In fact, the last time I thought about that, the last time I remember saying that to myself, was the day I went for my spirometry test. Talk about that in a minute. Oh my God. Statistics say that 30% of the people who smoked got COPD. 30%. So that leaves 70% of the people who smoked did not get COPD because they didn't have a genetic predisposition, predisposition to it. They weren't raised in a house with smokers. They had no or very little air pollution. 30% of the people who smoke will get COPD. 70% of the people get away scot-free. No wonder nobody's coming to our aid. Of those with COPD, 90% of them were smokers. Yeah, cool, eh? So it's kind of staggering, right? It's kind of staggering. And I can't tell you the countless number of people who have pointed their fingers, who have said, well, you smoked. Even people who smoked as long as I smoked have a tendency to point their finger and say, well, you smoked. And my response is, yes, I do smoke. And I'm not going to apologize for it because it was the environment in which I was raised, and I was given no incentive whatsoever to quit smoking. It was the environment that I was raised in. The government allowed it. The big cigarette manufacturers allowed it. Did they not think they'd have to compensate for the results of it? I mean, really. COPD is the third largest killer after cancer and heart and stroke. It is expected to become the second largest killer within a decade due to vaping and air pollution. COPD is the number one reason for hospital admissions and the number one reason why we have hallway healthcare in Ontario, Canada. They're leaving you out in the hall, hooked up to a vent. Your hands are tied and people are going all over the place because the place is so overcrowded. Oh my goodness. When I close my eyes and I think about that, I really get scared, and I'm so happy that I at least have a supportive family. I don't know what people do without it because, you can't take care of yourself. You can't take care of yourself. Then they just put you somewhere. So vaping's a real big deal now, eh? I see them vaping all over the place. And, nobody wants to go out and vape in the cold because, when I smoked, I didn't care what the temperature was outside. I didn't care. I don't know. It could be rainy. It could be anything. Now I can't breathe in the rain. So it's like way different. But anyways, I don't smoke now, so it doesn't matter. But I see them vaping everywhere, and the girls vape in the bathrooms, and it smells. Yeah, when you consider the effects and what the results of vaping, I mean, it just blows my mind to think about it. These vapes are so easy to get. In Canada, all across Canada, cannabis is legal. And the government is really investing money in education. You go in, they tell me this. I don't know. I have never been in a cannabis store, but I might go one of these days. I doubt it. But they tell me that these guys went to weed school and they know everything. So I think that there was some courses offered for cannabis. I don't know. I don't know whether it was growing or whatever it was. I think it was at Niagara College. I think that's where they did it. So there is people that know about cannabis and more than, and it's legal in Canada. So the government, like I said, places all over the pot stores all over the place. And vaping is what everybody is doing. I heard that a package of cigarettes, it's probably a large pack, $20. And I went, oh, could you imagine smoking now? I can't imagine. If you smoke, you should quit. That's all I got to say about that. I just hope that you find the strength to quit. Because it doesn't get any better. So, what are the other factors to getting COPD besides smoking? So, we all know that smoking had something to do with it. But some of the other factors are there is a genetic version of COPD. So, before you start pointing fingers and saying, well, you smoked, didn't you? There is a genetic predisposition to some kinds of COPD. So, it's from a liver deficiency, and very young people and entire families have it. Sometimes on the support groups, I hear people say, my mother, my father, my aunt, my uncle, everybody died with COPD or a core mobility of it, right? It's tragic in a family. It's absolutely tragic. If you live in an industrial city like I do in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, we are known for our steel. We are tough as nails. And we're called the Lunchbox City because our product is steel. That's what we do. We also have one of the major ports in Hamilton. I used to work at the port in the finance department. It had nothing to do with the port, really, but finance. But anyways, we have one of the largest ports in Canada too. So it's an industrial city. We have a lot of industrial, debris. And I don't live very close to the steel mills, but if you do, it's, even more cumbersome. They talk about their cars being covered and all that stuff, right? Working in construction or offices. So I was at an interview not too long ago, and I said to somebody that, the secretary in the office, who was the one that was in charge of the photocopier, was more likely to get COPD than anybody else. And why is that? Because we're always fanning the paper, right? I love it because I can't tell you how many times I stand there and fan the paper. And even if I was just opening it for somebody else, I'd still be standing there fanning the paper. And yeah, I do both ends too, Yeah, this is great. So it's all debris that we take in. And in construction, there's a lot of construction, there's dust and everything. Being post-menopausal. Or we could also say the natural aging process. Because, as we get older, it's not just our lungs that diminish. Look at your muscles and everything too, right? But when I look at pictures from 2 years ago, like first COVID Christmas, not sure that I like the way that I'm aging. Can't do anything about it. It is what it is. And, wrinkles on my face. And I keep doing this, going, oh, I should get a facelift. Could you imagine me thinking, oh, I should get a facelift? It would help. Having had blood clots in your lungs. After my daughter was born, I ran into gallbladder problems, and I was sick before I conceived her. And then when I conceived her, I was much better. Very shortly after she was born, I became sick again, and we figured out that it was my gallbladder. So I have three. I have a son that is almost 3, one that is 2, and a newborn. In those days, they didn't have laparoscopy. So it was major surgery, huge, huge cut in the side of me. And remember that I just had my 3rd baby in 3 years. So they did the surgery, and I developed blood clots. And the blood clots went to my lungs. And they told me how lucky I was because the blood clots went to my lungs. Because the only other 2 places that could have gone was my heart, and it would have killed me immediately, or my brain, which would have caused a stroke. So they said, you're very lucky. You're very, very lucky. We just have to, shrink the blood clot, and then you're all done. But you see, you're not done, because there was damage caused to the lungs. And the funny thing is that I quit smoking when I got pregnant with my daughter. And when the doctor came in those days, you had your family doctor, right? He'd come in and see you every day. They can't charge for it anymore, so they don't do it. The nurse said, she keeps coughing, trying to clear her throat. And he said, oh, don't worry about that. She's a smoker. And I heard that, and I said, no, I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke. I haven't smoked for over a year. And they said, oh, we better check. And they got the blood clot in the leg. So having a blood clot go to your lungs causes a certain amount of damage. And when we're born a preemie, your lungs aren't developed yet. In fact, little known fact, our lungs don't actually fully develop until we're 12 years old. So most of us were really on virgin lungs when we started smoking. You have to learn to advocate for yourself, for your health and well-being with COPD. A doctor told me when I was first diagnosed, you're not going to die of COPD, so you better start learning to live with it. He said, they're going to give you the tricks in breast rehab. He set me up. He was the best doctor. I loved him. Dr. Pugsley at the Firestone Clinic. He was great. He didn't agree with my heart doctor. So anyhow, we need to learn to advocate for ourselves. We need to learn to speak up regardless of the consequences or whose feelings we hurt. We need to take some time to do the planning. So it's holiday season. People are celebrating and going places and come here and blah 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 blah. We have to learn that If we don't call the shots on how things should be and what you can possibly do, somebody else will do it for us. We need to learn to chart our days like the nurses chart our stay in the hospital. Doctor comes to the desk. He says, "Tell me about the patient." The nurse is right there with them. She said this, blah, 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 blah. She gives him the Coles notes, Cliff notes, whatever you call them. And from that information, he makes his decision on what's going to happen, what you need, this sort of thing, right? If you need extra tests or whatever. So we need to do the charting for the doctors and give him the cliff notes of what happened. So, okay, so I see my doctor every 6 months. So what has changed from the last one, from the last visit? You know, if you're keeping a journal, it doesn't have to be a formal journal. It can be any kind of a book that has paper in it that will give you someplace to write. And then you can say to him, over the last 6 months, you know, I've been really stable, or my breathing has gotten worse, or my breathing is worse when. And then this helps him to determine what needs to happen to you. But in the meantime, you need to know yourself what to do and how to do it. And if you don't tell others how it's going to be, they will make the decision for you. Abdicate for yourself. This is Barbara Moore for Catch Your Breath 60, and I appreciate everybody who comes to join me. We'll be back next Tuesday at 3 o'clock for Tuesday tea time.